Class Plus Business BTS with Mukul Rustagi.
Hi, and welcome to Business BTS with Class Plus. Extremely happy to welcome one of our old friends, Nikhil Kapoor, who's a partner at Strive, taking out sweet 15-20 minutes for us today evening. And yes, gunning straight to learning from Nikhil how early investing looks like. Nikhil, you are one of the rare people who have turned from an entrepreneur to a partner at a VC. Would love to know how is life very different? What are the most different aspects from being a startup founder to a VC partner today?
Thanks, Mukul, for having me on this. It's awesome to be doing this. I think on your question, it really depends on like day to day, but I would say just less fires to fight, like as a VC versus a founder. I think as a founder, everything hits you pretty roughly, right? Like all the troughs and all the peaks are also like excessively, filled with adrenaline. I think as a VC, you learn to sort of, all the waves sort of combine together to nullify the impact. Because a company would be doing like amazingly well, but at the same time you must be fighting fires in another company, so it all sort of neutralizes. Yeah, but I think on the plus side, right, like it just also means like a lot of new products to build, a lot of consecutive problems to solve. And I'm an engineer by training, similar to you. So engineers, we like solving problems, right? And that's what you teach people also, how to solve problems. So like I think that way I'm a perfect example of somebody who likes doing that on a daily basis. Yeah.
Got it. But so help the people who are viewing this. So a lot of people don't really know how a VC really evaluates and let's say manages their investments. So just to shed a light,
yeah,
because every founder has the right to know this, right? And so many founders could do so much better, like if they had this knowledge out there with them. So can you help us? Can you help share whatever is comfortable to you on how do you evaluate a company when you do so, and how deep do you really go? And when I say you, I mean very early stage investing, which is probably seed stage, or sometimes even like it's a tech-based idea, or it's even a pre-prototype, right? So since you don't have traction, or let's say yearly long data to look at it, how do you actually go about it, and how deep do you go about it?
Yeah. No, all good questions. And I think as with anything, it really depends on case to case. But why don't we take like an example of Class Plus itself, right? Like, so I think in the case of Class Plus, right? Like I remember meeting you in that cafe in Khan Market, right? And, you walked in like this, you were already busy on your phone. You were taking some sales calls, like even as you were walking up. Even first impressions, the first like 15, 20 seconds, like they matter a lot. I could see like how much tenacity you had towards building Class Plus, right? And how much you believed in it, right? Like it just comes out, that passion, that energy. So I think the energy and the passion and the aggressiveness, like that is key. And, many founders miss this. But in the end, every VC that you talk to, you probably have only 30 minutes with them to impress them, and your job is in the first 30 minutes to get them to the next step, which is okay, let's begin, right? And then from there on, you have to convince them during that next 32 minutes to 1 hour, and then it's almost about time that they should be giving you a term sheet probably, right? Especially in the seed stage, right? So it's just these 1-2 hours, and if that day you as a founder, you're not on the top of your game, then you might lose out, even though you might be like the best company to walk on the planet, right? So going back to Class Plus example, you walked in, you gave a terrific pitch. I still, till this date, I tell people like I love it when you just took a sheet and a pen and you just started, like, no deck, no nothing. You just drew it out and just pitched that way. And like that became like a very, very new way for me to receive a pitch. So anything new, anything creative, anything passionate, like that really catches our attention on a founder personality basis, right? And then, of course, you always have to think about the business, right? Like, and when we think business, it starts with market, right? Like always, it's about the market. How big is this? If this becomes successful, will it be like massive, right? Because if it's not massive, then, at the time of exit, it doesn't really move the needle for the funds, right? So for a VC, for the outcome to be great, like, your company needs to be operating in a massive market. So we, understand the market. And then after that, we look at the business model. Can this really make money? Even if it's not making money right now, will it make money at scale, right? And then what has been proven so far in terms of momentum, right? And that, momentum can be seen even without, coming up with a deck, right? Like even if the founder has not come up with a deck, but they've talked to, the 5 key people that you need to be talking to be able to build that particular business, and just getting access to those 5 people, that can show momentum, right? So momentum is always it's an equation of how much you have achieved divided by how much time have you spent achieving it, right? And we try to evaluate both, right? So, if you've spent like a year operating the business and you don't have much traction to show for, then it's like very low momentum. But, within a month, if you manage to achieve a lot, then it shows like very high momentum. So with you guys, like, you already had like hundreds of coaching institutes. You've only been operating the business for maybe less than a year when we met, right? Like, and that was great momentum, right? So we really loved it. So I think market, business model, momentum checked out, and we did it.
Assuming that this way of evaluation would matter or differentiate from different stages of the company. So probably how you evaluate a company at a seed stage, is it very, very different from how you evaluate it at a later stage, or it's just slightly different with the macros being very consistent?
Yeah, well, you know what, like as a fund, we used to do Series A long ago, and now we're doing very much everything seed. And personally, I feel there's not too much difference between seed and Series A, right? I think it's still pretty much a founder bet and a market bet. And it's just some people get more comfort with a bit more data, and some people can get comfort on that momentum equation and business model equation, like, with less data. So I think that's the only difference, like how much risk appetite do you have as a person, and how much are you willing to, let the dice roll and give you your odds. But I think beyond that, Series B, Series C, it becomes a different ballgame, right? Like you can't walk to a tiger and just pitch like an idea, right? Like you need to have significant sort of growth, you need to have revenue, you need to have business, you need to have a solid team, right? Like everything else comes together. So I think Series B onwards, like things start changing, but till then, it's pretty much the same.
No, I agree. I've seen both those stages now. Just strive to do that one. Help me with this. And talking about Strive and early investing. So I remember you placing a huge amount of trust in the B2B space, while the majority of the market was actually very inclined towards a consumer-facing thing, right? So, and although I understand that might be a strategy difference, but why were you super bullish about B2B in the first place? Forget education, forget ClassPlus, forget everything. But in general, you seemed a little more bullish about that during that phase 2-3 years back. So, talking of early investing, how do you actually form a thesis over a segment which you have to continue and live with for the next 7 to 10 years?
Yeah. So I think there are 2 reasons. One is personal and the other is more external. The personal reason, like I come from B2B background, right? Like all my life, I've been either a SaaS founder or a SaaS builder, or I've been sort of, selling for my own company, right? Like, so I understand like the whole B2B journey, like building the product, delivering value, selling, and selling to a business like or an enterprise, right? Like that's something that I'm able to wrap my head around. So that's the personal reason. And as a VC, it's always good to be playing to your strengths, right? That impresses founders like you guys to take a leap of faith on us, even when we are taking a leap of faith on you, right? And you won't take my money if I don't understand your business through and through, right? And can add some value to it, right? So I think that's the personal side. As for the external side, I think 3 years ago, and even till this date, like I hold true to this. I personally feel like India is not ready for the consumer journey, and I might get bashed for this like everywhere, right? Like especially consumer VCs, they'll definitely bash me for it. But I still feel like we're not ready. Like I think the depth of the market is not there yet on the pure consumer side. And it's still very, very expensive to acquire these customers like, online. Versus I think the businesses actually, they're the drivers of the GDP of our country in India, as well as most emerging markets, right? So I think the key to unlock value, at least in the next 5 years for now, maybe after 5 years I change my mind. But at least for the next 5 years, I feel the key is still, with the SMEs in the country, and that's sort of seen in a lot of these scaled up companies. Like even though their top line is great, I think their bottom line is not that healthy, right? And even for public market companies, that are going public now, we are seeing like the same sort of saga, right? So I feel we're still a bit far away from that point. Maybe in 5 years we catch up to the global market sort of standards in terms of GDP per capita and just the very fundamental basics of consumer internet. Beyond which we can start looking at consumer internet as well. Yeah.
And speaking of this entire thing,
it's a controversial one.
It's not a controversial one. It's something which is not out there and that does not get spoken a lot. But it has happened since ages, right? We obviously see tons of companies applying for that and making themselves look the best bet for that segment or that position where a VC would want to place money in, right? You essentially have probably tens and hundreds of companies fighting for that one chance to raise capital from somebody great. But what is on the other side? Like if you find a great company, and so for the benefit of everybody who's here listening, do you also fight over deals? And how do you navigate competing markets, right? So you mentioned how you evaluate founders on different parameters and choose them. But talk us about your incidents of when you have had to face a very competitive deal where you find a great set of founders, a great set of market. And let's just speak about it. What happens on the background in those cases, and then how do you win when you have to win that?
Yeah. I mean, look, firstly, we like to take a bit more contrarian bets, right? Like, or at least that seem contrarian, at least when we're investing in them. And so as a result, like we don't see too much like shoving of elbows, right? Like, but we have seen a fair share of it, right? And especially right now, the market is like just crazy. The good teams, the good founders, the good businesses, people are willing to take a bet on it, right? And the top tier funds in India, they're very large now. And, throwing $1 million here and there, like it's very easy for them, right? And they all want to operate in the seed stage, which is a bit funny. Like, these funds, like their global counterparts, they don't operate in the seed stage, right? Like you don't see a Sequoia or an Axel leading a seed round of $1 million in like the US, right? They leave it for micro funds, right? But in India, they're still fighting for that, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million sort of round, even though they have a massive fund of maybe 400, $500 million, right? Maybe a billion sometimes, right? So it is competitive. I think the way we are able to differentiate, or let's say come along with them into certain rounds, right? The reason for that is when we are able to showcase value to the founders, right? And that happens when we stick to our guns, we focus on the areas that we really understand. So, going back, B2B is a sector that we understand, but even within that, SaaS is something that we really understand. And within that, like dev infra is something which is sort of a speciality for us, right? So whenever it's the time for a dev infra company to raise, whether or not they reach out to us initially, but if we end up hearing about them and we end up chatting with them, they realize that we are the kind of people that they need to bring on board because we've seen similar journeys in other companies, and we understand truly what they're building, and we understand the GTM, we understand the PMF, product market fit, right? So because of this, we are able to squeeze in. Sometimes we are able to outcompete like some of the bigger funds, and sometimes we are just able to work alongside them, right? And a lot of times we lose the deal also. So, it's okay. We can lose a few deals. It's fine, right? Like we don't have to win every deal. And we also want to work with people who see value in us and who want us to be on the ride together with them. Because that's when it's a symbiotic relationship. And in the next venture or whenever their people leave to start companies, their VP engineering leaves to start their next company, then, we are the first call, right? So it's a virtuous cycle, and we have to always be there for these companies, right? Yeah.
No, you've told me the exact incident separately. With the last thing that you mentioned actually happened. It was exactly the VP of engineering. No, cool. Super thanks for that. So as a next part, for the next 120 to 150 seconds, Nikhil, I'll just shoot you some super concise questions and would expect a super concise reply, probably 5 to 7 words or lesser. And yeah, so let's try to do that fast thing, right? So Nikhil, Q1, what is your record for the fastest time in which you have said yes to a founder from meeting to term sheet? What's that fastest been? And you can keep the company name to yourself, that's not a problem, but what's that time span be?
Yeah. I think 12 hours.
Got it. So you've offered term sheet to somebody within 12 hours of meeting. That's one.
Yeah.
One company.
I want to change that to 1 hour.
It'll happen sooner or later. I think with the times we are entering, I think it's bound to happen sooner or later. One company, and I'm pretty sure you would have a large anti portfolio, where my second question actually comes in. Everybody has an anti portfolio. Nothing new. But one company that you really think that should not have been in your anti portfolio, but it is in your anti portfolio. And you're free, if you want to describe and define how your anti portfolio looks like, do that for the audience.
Yeah, my whole team knows this because I think I talk about it probably once a month. It's Meesho. We looked at the deal at the seed stage. I really liked the founders. We went over and over it. I was too young at that time, and I relied on other VCs' thoughts, and realized, and they dissuaded me from doing the deal, and ended up being a massive company, and we could have made a solid return on that one. Yeah.
I think that personally, I'm a big fan of what they've done. I think I'm a fanboy of that company because for me, Meesho has redefined 2-3 things. One, the kind of impact that's supremely large. They've redefined how distribution can be done in India. That's second. And third is how the commerce choices of the hinterlands of the country are so different, and they would have remained underserved if something like that was not there. So personally, a big fan, and I'm happy to admit that. And I hope Vidit is hearing this. He's a friend, obviously, but yeah, no, still a fanboy of Misha. Right? Third thing, what's the funniest / strangest thing that has happened to you, or you have seen during when somebody was pitching to you?
Oh, funniest / strangest thing.
Some founder would have probably said to you or told to you, or like did something in the pitch to probably woo you over.
I think founders have been like pretty sensible around me. I don't know why, but there have been times when people have like joined the call like half asleep, but kudos to them. Like they were probably like slept like only 2-3 hours and slept late in the night. This is usually happens with devs. Like they sleep at like 5 or 6 a.m. and then they have a 9 a.m. schedule, and like they realize like 10 minutes into the call that they haven't like joined the call, and then they join like completely right like straight from the bread. That's the weirdest thing that we have seen so far. But I wish that changes. Like maybe somebody's dog jumps on them or some funny stuff happens. Not yet.
Okay. Fourth thing, like if you have a company where you are 100% convinced on data, but you're not feeling the gut sense about it, versus a company where there's hardly any data, or you're not really, you don't have a large data set, but you're 100% convinced on the gut feel. As a VC, which one would you choose, and why?
Always the gut. Always the gut. Yeah. I
So
think
gut
we rely on our gut. Yeah, like a lot more than data. Yeah, especially as seed stage, early stage VCs.
So if you write to somebody that we found your traction early, that's a lie, right?
Traction early is the biggest lie that VCs say.
Some people call me that the traction is early and successively in every round. So,
yeah. Like I have made it a point in our firm to never write to somebody these 2 words, "You're too early for us."
I'm glad that it's changing.
Like we are not allowed to say that. Yeah, we're not allowed to say that. Yeah,
that's super cool. Being on the other side, I can really tell you that's the most confusing thing, because as a founder, you don't know what to do because there are so many variables. It's 2, and then it's early, and then it's for us. So there are 3 variables in that single line. Right? Last question, and this comes again very personal to only and only about you. What is that one misconception or presumption about a VC partner's life that most people out there in the world would think, but is not true?
I think people think VCs have a lot of money, like personally, but that's not really the case actually. Like, I think only VCs who have been in the market for like 10-20 years, they end up making enough money. Most of the VCs, like, we have like, if you're a part of a big fund, maybe you have a decent salary, but like, as a small fund like ours, micro fund, $30 to $100 million kind of funds, we don't have so much money for management fee. We spend most of it on, the team, and we are supposed to eat into the carry. And by the way, we are also supposed to put money into the GP commitment, right? Which is sometimes way more than like what you are ever going to make on salaries with this fund, right? So actually, we are like donors into the fund rather than the other way around. So you might think that, hey, this fancy guy, like probably making a lot more money than me. Like, it changes a lot the moment like a company scales, which happens very quickly, and like the VC is still sitting there and probably scaling their fund after years. Yeah.
That's super honest. I know that, but it's super honest and super brave for you to say that on camera and for everybody who's watching this. No, I think Nikhil, this has been superbly fast, superbly fine, and I liked it. And thank you for coming on the camera, sharing whatever we spoke about with a bunch of folks who will view it today, and a bunch of folks who will view it 1 year down the line, and a bunch of folks who will view this till eternity. So thank you for sharing that. And for whoever wants to hit up Nikhil, his email is nikhil.kapoor@stripe.vc, or you can just reach out to him on LinkedIn. Super responsive. Been knowing him for the last 3-4 years. And yes, since we are going of the first session, just a fun fact, Nikhil also passed us once before he invested in ClassPlus. So I don't think so I think just finishing that on a light note. And take care, Nikhil, and thank you, and see you all in the BTS with ClassPlus sometime soon again. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mukul, for having me. This was amazing. Yeah.